All right. Welcome back to the podcast. I recently posted, generally about, a brief reflection and mindful strategy. Today, I want to talk about, Liver King, basically about his 9 ancestral tenets. So I'll be going through those today, talking some about my experience with that. So I'm gonna mention the ones listed. I mean, you can Google them. But it's called Liver King's 9 ancestral tenets. So there's sleep, eat, move, shield, connect, sun, and bond. Sorry, I missed one. After sun, there's fight and bond. And so, lately I've really been dealing with a lot. Like, I think everybody knows by now, this whole transitional process in summer. I kind of moved without a real solid game plan. In my head, I was like, yeah, I'll be back by like September, but it probably honestly took until September for me to start actually feeling like I had the energy and motivation and willpower and actually any desire at all to even start even thinking about making any kind of changes with kind of what I had going on pretty much. Like it was a lot. It was pretty draining to kind of make a good decision for myself. Like it's one of those things that I tend to be, at least in the past, like when I look back, I kind of notice that I do have this tendency to kind of want to push through things that really aren't necessary. There's something about like quitting something that I've already invested energy and time and effort into, even if it's not necessarily beneficial for me. It's hard to kind of hit that quit button. So that was kind of what was going on with the people I was living with. It was like I already knew I didn't want to live with them, but I wasn't leaving either. And so that was just a process, and then getting COVID and everything. And then I kind of just realized, not just now, but like, I realized I was like, eventually I was like, I kind of need something to do, something to follow along with. And so I think that's when I got more into podcasting, and I started podcasting more, like almost every day. I mean, I was already doing that for a while, but I can't remember which month. I think it was like July. Yeah, because I remember it must have been around July, because I got COVID around July. And I got COVID, and then I kind of realized, I couldn't really record for a little bit. And then, once I started, with the course I'm in right now, I started having less time, once I started the portion of starting to switch into a new job. That kind of started in September. So, yeah, I mean, I've been trying different things, like coming across different things, because I've just been studying a lot of different, I don't know if you call it lifestyles, but definitely a lot of different methods that people use to kind of live. You've probably heard a lot of the content I post about, like, that I was posting about the Amish. I posted a lot of stuff about Judaism, about Christianity, about paganism. Sometimes, things can come from like a direct religious perspective, but then other times, I start getting into other stuff like people who focus, not to say that, spiritual health, physical health, mental health, that it's not all connected, because it's all connected. It's all connected. You can't just have like physical health, but then like you never have any aspect of spiritual thing, or you never eat healthy, or you never have like, there's other stuff that comes along with it, but one thing I've kind of noticed was, like I don't know if I was really like searching for something. It was more like a project of searching through different things, but I never really found myself really like trying to search for a specific method to use. But I was like, kind of like, what could it hurt? So there are a lot of like content creators, even like Jamie Messina, and like other people that I've come across that have some positive outlooks on things that they post. So let's look at this Liver King 9 Ancestral Tenets. So the ones I mentioned, sleep, eat, move, shield, connect, cold, sun, fight, bond. So sleep, is definitely something that, is a necessity. I mean, all of these are necessities, but sleep is definitely something that can't really be really substituted in any way. Caffeine isn't a substitute for poor sleep. Sleeping in isn't, sleeping in might be a little helpful, like just to get the hours, consecutive hours in, but as far as I understand, it's not a helpful idea to think about like, oh, I'm gonna catch up on sleep. I once had a challenge from a supervisor that, was explaining, trying to spend 12 to 24 hours a week, consecutive hours, just like not doing anything, not going out, not really spending money, not really having to do any chores, not really, having to do any kind of responsibility. Now I was kind of raised around a culture where, people kept the Jewish Sabbath. I was kind of raised around a Sabbath culture. And one thing I found beneficial about that was definitely that it was always motivational. Like having like a mandatory break in a religious way really does help to just kind of shut down life. Now that's not necessarily directly related to sleep, but we'll get back to those types of topics. Eating, nutrition is definitely helpful. Food is, when I had a trainer, they said food is like at least 65% of your fitness. Move, so exercising, at least the basics. Like I feel like everyone who checks in with their doctor once a year, a lot of this stuff they're gonna tell you, sleep 8 hours a day, eat the food groups, and all this kind of stuff. How much calories you should be eating, what the proportion should look like, and portion size and portion control, and get at least 30 minutes of cardio a day. And a lot of that, I mean, those are only 3 things that we're taught probably since kindergarten or preschool. It's not like there aren't that many people who don't know about doing those things, but myself included, as well as a lot of people I know a lot of people who struggle with doing these things. Now, I have gone multiple years without having a consistency of those 3 things. Definitely when I was going through grad school, there was a point where I just stopped cooking altogether, and just started stopping by fast food. There were definitely other times where, I would lose sleep or not feel fully rested. There were times in my life when I would just drop by the gym whenever I would leave from work or class or whatever. Because I always liked living close enough to the gym that, it was on the way home and then dropping by the gym. One easy way for me with the gym is, sitting on the bike. Just sit on the bike, the one with the forward-facing pedals, and that's the time for checking emails, texting, going on social media. I mean, I know it's not as focused, but it's like usually you'll already get in 30 minutes of cardio by that point, and I just put it on a pretty high resistance, like 20, and just pedal it out. And at the very least, that's pretty helpful. Now, the difficulty with gyms is that you're going, I don't want to call it a waste. It's not a waste of time. But if you really are trying to do just a 30-minute thing, I've usually found that it's just easier to do that from home. Like, you can do plenty of at-home exercises, like 10 minutes worth of cardio in the house, even just squats. Just do 10 minutes of squats, and then just body weight exercises, push-ups, I don't know, there's all kinds of stuff, like those calf raises, you can do wall push-ups, wall sits, lunges. I mean, just that basic stuff for 30 minutes is fine. Especially if you're pretty consistent with it, it's going to work out just fine. It's kind of enough cardio in there for most people. But figuring out what you need to eat based on your exercise and movement levels, that's something that, not everybody knows what that looks like for them. Sometimes it helps to consult a nutritionist or dietitian. The next one is shield. So, shielding against environmental dangers, protecting against things like Wi-Fi, 5G, different types of light, like when you're trying to sleep, like blue light. There's a lot of stuff that, I'm still learning about. One thing I've kind of incorporated recently, maybe I can mention it here, is trying to really be a lot more attentive to screen time. Now, that for me is a very hard one because, like, those 2 things, I would say screen time and multitasking, right? So if I think about my typical day, when it's not maybe like a super focused day, like I'm not married or anything, so usually like I can spend days pretty much by myself, not really I wouldn't say I don't interact with anybody Like, I'm always interacting with people, but maybe not physically in person every day. But I mean, I've always kind of lived with people for the most part too. So I pretty much see people like every day. Like, there might be a few days every so often where I just like might just stay in my room and just work from my room and just make it a point to not really see anybody for maybe like 2 days, maybe 3 days. I just really want to be by myself. Every so often that happens, but I think almost every day, I see people. But I would say the multitasking for me is definitely a challenge to avoid. I work 8 hours. I'm on the computer for at least a little over 8 hours because, I log on a little early, log off, a little after. So at least a couple minutes more than 8 hours, if not much longer than that. So right now my schedule is, if I wake up early enough and have something I want to record on, I'll do like a podcast recording or so, however many I can fit in. So that's before work, at least 15 minutes to maybe like an hour. I don't know if I would consider that screen time. I mean, technically it is because I'm recording into my phone, so there's not much I can really do about that. So it's technically screen time, but I'm not really like actively like watching anything. Like, sometimes if I'm on the Anchor app, I'll watch the time, because it times out after 60 minutes, and so it'll cut off the episode. It'll save automatically usually, but it'll cut off the episode. So that's one thing to be aware of. But a typical day for me does include a lot of screen time, and I'm mentioning this for the area of Shield. So for me, if I'm not recording in the morning, I might listen to something kind of motivational or tune in to like Jamie Messina if she's online, or like, I'm trying to find more people to tune into in the morning that go live, because I really like that kind of live, like, morning motivational type of thing. I have a friend who's a pastor who does an Instagram prayer every day, just about on weekdays, but he does it around 9 in the morning, and it's like I'm already an hour into work at that point, so sometimes I just don't even pay attention that he's doing that, or I just forget. Like, usually 10 or 11 is an easier time for me, because that's about when I start wanting a break. And so I usually see, like, usually in the morning before I've even started work, I'm already kind of like, maybe check my emails, checking texts, podcasting, recording, or listening to something that I'm online for 8 hours. Now, for work, I'm not literally in front of the computer all the time. Like, sometimes I'll take calls outside just because I can, like outside, like in the sun, in the yard or in the driveway or something. I don't usually take my computer outside of my desk. Like, I keep it on my desk because I don't want to move it too much and have a risk of dropping it or anything like that. I usually try not to move it too much, and I keep it in one spot. Even though it's a very portable laptop, like, they have it so we can go out in the field and actually work with clients in person. So it's one of those ThinkPad, Lenovo, Yoga. It flips back and has like a tablet mode with like a stylus and everything. So that's one thing, is that I'm definitely online and multitasking. Like, I'll listen to Ken Coleman, I'll listen to Dave Ramsey, I'll listen to Iced Coffee Hour once a week. Sometimes I'll re-listen to episodes of stuff. Ben Greenfield. I usually have those are kind of my list of people that are pretty routine that I'll tune into their content. Lex Friedman, it's all like kind of longer form content. So usually in my documentation time, at least the last 2 hours of my day, I've got a podcast on. while I'm documenting. But a lot of the times too, when I'm just researching and stuff, I might have a podcast on too. Now, I'm a big believer in deep work, deep focus. I do like how Lex Friedman does like the 4 hour, the 4 hours, and then has other things during the day that he'll do, like working out, and playing guitar and other stuff that he incorporates into his days. I think he does intermittent fasting or some form of like fasting in the mornings or something. But yeah, I've definitely noticed that my stress levels get pretty high with the multitasking. Another thing I notice is kind of the brain fog that I experience. Now, I know a lot of that is tied to, like, if I have THC or if I don't sleep properly or if I eat something for breakfast that's just going to make me foggy. For me, ideally, in the mornings, coffee on an empty stomach, especially if it's bulletproof coffee on an empty stomach, and then a lot of water. Usually my focus is like dead on. If I put cacao in my coffee, I'm not too wired. I'm very focused. But when it comes to work, because of my relationship with this job lately, it's not something I'm going to get totally into, but I'm just not into the job anymore. And so I really do prefer to just be completely distracted while I'm working. I'm just like, I don't even care. I'm honestly just kind of like checked out. That's kind of my version of like, yes, I'm working, but I'm kind of checked out. Like, I'm not really here. I'd rather be anywhere else. Not anywhere else, but like, that's kind of why I like listening to stuff and like, just because it's like, it takes my head off of, I'm doing this job that's, right now it's just a paycheck, honestly. I'm not trying to move higher in this job or anything. And it's, I've run my course with this job. Other things I'd say I shield from, just on a more practical level, is just paying attention to my stress levels with content that I consume. So recently I noticed that my stress levels were pretty low, and so I started engaging more in watching certain shows. I was rewatching The L Word. I think I'm in season 4 now of that. I think I'm in season 4 also of Game of Thrones. I started rewatching that. But then somewhere in the last week or 2 weeks, I noticed my stress levels a little bit with content where there's arguing and bickering. Like, I was rewatching Gilmore Girls 2, and I realized just kind of like their dialogue with all the like back and forth, just quickly talking, and how they do that like back and forth kind of like bickering back and forth all the time. It just was a little obnoxious to me. And then Lorelai, the main, the mother, her personality is just not for me, like, as far as watching, like, just her relationship style and how stressed she is all the time and how she kind of sabotages stuff, and she's got her own issues going on. Just watching shows where people have all these conflicts, it's like, what am I really getting out of it? Game of Thrones, everybody's just trying to survive. And, then you got those other shows that I watch where people are just stressed out. There's always something that people are stressed out about. And I started realizing how I was feeling this week and last week. And I was just like, I'm just going to stop watching this stuff. So I've been watching more like comedy and just like podcasts. That's kind of more my vibe. Reading books. I love reading books about martial arts. That is one thing though that kind of keeps me offline is reading. Trying to do more meditation. Just really trying to slow my life down and not do too much multitasking and too much overstimulation. That's definitely a downfall. I noticed that I just, it makes it so I can't actually focus and think on what I want. I've noticed it does lead me to make poor decisions because I'm just so worn out. I'm just like, I just need to veg and watch this or do this or whatever instead of like go work out or go do what I need. It's like I'm so tired from all the multitasking and stressed out from all the like other types of things that are supposed to be potentially entertaining that it's like I can't even get the energy to do the basic stuff that I need to be doing. Connect. So people have probably heard of electromagnetic fields, or the concept of grounding or earthing. So the basics of it, planting your feet on the ground, bare feet. Or they say hugging a tree. Like the earth does have an electromagnetic field, as do our bodies. And it is possible to get a charge from the earth. But because we're so disconnected from it, from rubber-soled shoes or rubber tire, transportation, we're not really having a lot of opportunities in our daily lives to be connected physically with the earth. Even if you're taking walks, usually you're not barefooted walking on the sidewalk. You can be, but that's still concrete. It's a sidewalk. It's not dirt. It's not sand. Now, I'm lucky enough to live near a beach. I'm lucky enough to have a front yard and backyard that have, like, access to, like, dirt and mud and plants and trees. We get water from the hose. There's a certain aspect of nature there, even though we're in the middle of one of the world's biggest cities, but it's like at least there's a little bit of nature around me. Which kind of moves me into cold and sun. So cold is something that I have noticed I benefit from. And I never could really fully articulate it, but then I noticed, when I started listening to a little bit of what's his name? I think his last name's like Hoff or something. The guy who does like the extreme cold. That's kind of why I like wearing shorts a lot, and I wasn't really able to really explain that to people, but I really have gotten used to the way that air feels on my skin, and wearing shorts is like the least amount of clothing I can wear where I can just comfortably just do what I gotta do and go where I need to be, and no one's gonna hassle you for like wearing shorts and a t-shirt, So when I go into a grocery store, it's freezing cold because I'm in the freezer section or whatever. Like if I go into Starbucks, it's freezing cold because pretty much all Starbucks stores are like absolutely freezing because they're always pumping the AC. When I go outside, I know what temperature it is, what time of day the sun feels like on certain days, like when it changes, how that feels. I'm very connected with the sun and the wind just because of having like so many years of my life where I'm not like bundled up. But I notice when I do bundle up, it does take me a while to get used to it. Now, another way to get cold is one easy thing is like a shower. Now, my shower that I have at this house has really hot water options, and that's a nice thing, especially when you have like a lot of muscle tension and stuff like I do. It's kind of one motivator for like working out is because I'm always like, I'm going to be sore, but then I'm like, but I can just jump into a really hot shower and it's really nice. And our tub actually has like jets on it and everything. So it's like, if you really want to take like a bath, it's kind of like a mini jacuzzi style. It's got like jets, so that's pretty dope. But so we have that hot option very easily. My shower doesn't really get cold though, unless you count like when you first turn it on. So when I first turn on the shower, it's like freezing cold, especially this time of year. But if I put it all the way to cold, once it's kind of heated up enough, like once I put it to cold, like the complete coldest it gets is kind of like a lukewarm. So it's not actually that cold. But the hot is really nice. It's really hot. So both that hot and cold is what he does talk about, but he just mentions in the 9 ancestral tenets the cold. So the sun, vitamin D, like we can't really go without vitamin D. There's also fight. So, something that I've been avoiding is definitely this one. This one for me kind of took me out of almost all the other ones. Now, growing up, I grew up in a religious environment. And in a way, there was almost a form of competition, like not really, but there was like a standard of living where you would challenge, at least at the very least, you're challenging yourself to live by a certain set of strict doctrines and patterns of living and things like that. So regardless of what was going on around you in the world, it was always like a challenge to like do this in this way. So for example, I could be learning about like I could it could be anything. I could be in high school, I'm waiting outside of one of my classes and some rude person like knocks into me and like purposely, like this never happened, but like purposely like hits my book onto the floor. I could curse him out, I could shove him, I could yell at him, I could get confrontational, or I could just be very passive, pick it up, go about my business, but always kind of like in that way, like reflecting on like what does the religion say, what are the traditions, what are the practices in this kind of setting according to how I'm trying to live my life, what would be a method to manage this situation. Somebody honks at you and you're in the car in the drive-through, what would be the method to deal with this situation? You notice that you have bank fraud and you go to the bank and there's 3 minutes before closing, but it's right before a weekend and you need to go into a physical branch, and the person closing up, the security or whatever, there's 3 minutes left till closing and they let 2 people in, and then you're right behind them and they say sorry, even though you're like 6 inches from the person who just got in the door last. It's like, and time isn't even up yet. It's not 5 p.m. You took off work early to go. Like, do you argue with the person? Do you confront them? Do you assert yourself? Like, how do you address it? Like, one thing I always appreciated about religion, not necessarily like the aspect of organized religion and the control and all that kind of stuff that's maybe in a way it can be a little bit negative. I always liked the challenge of, using different kind of methods that you learn and study and talk about with others that are challenging, and kind of challenging my own self to like live by those as a benefit in my life, to not go around yelling and screaming at everybody, to just live in a certain way, that if I believe in it, then it's different than if somebody's forcing you to do it, or if you don't even believe it. But it's like, you don't have to have a religion to do that. You can have your own method that you create yourself, or somebody else's method, or some ancient method, or whatever. But that's one thing that I've noticed, was helpful when I was growing up. And, a lot of that I was able to carry into, I feel like that's where the majority of my success came from, all the way past getting a master's and, trying to get into a doctoral program and then only surviving 3 years, but at least surviving 3 years. Um, you know, there was that sense of competition, not necessarily with others, but with myself. There was that fight. There was that risk involved of like, and I noticed once things didn't work out with grad school, that really affected me. It really kind of made it so I no longer really wanted to have that fight and competition. Like I noticed I really took like a backseat kind of passive role in life, and I was just like, that's why I've been like fucking coasting at this job for like 3 years, 7 years, like whatever. It's gonna be 7 years, December 20th. 7 freaking years at a dead end job, that I already knew I didn't want to, go forward in. I thought, okay, best case scenario, it might be possible that they'll just do me a solid like they've done a couple people in the company, but I wasn't like banking on it. I wasn't hoping for it. I was like, okay, if they do offer something better, I'm going to take it, but I'm not going to apply. I'm not going to try for something better. And so that's how I got this job, is because I applied for something better. Well, they kind of handed it to me. In a way, it's like almost like a promotion, but just because of the way the structure is, that they don't give promotions and raises and stuff like that. And then the last one is Bond. Now, I don't think these are listed in any order that's particularly like one's more important than the other. I don't really know, but Bond is more like social connections, intimate connections, authentic connections with others, on a pretty regular basis, if not daily. But that's pretty much all I have to say about these. I really gotta go to the bathroom. But thanks for listening.